guys, Han here, and welcome back, superstars. If this is your first time in my galaxy, hi, I'm Han. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a K-pop fan of 20 years, and I've worked here in South Korea as a marketing expert in the K-pop industry. Welcome to my universe. As I'm sure most of you know by now, I've been covering the ongoing dispute between Hybe, Hee-Jin, ADOR, and NewJeans, affectionately named ADORgate on this channel, since almost the very beginning of this fiasco. And as we come to the end of what I believe is chapter 1, because this story is far from over, I thought this would be a good time for us to take stock and remind ourselves how we got here. And we'll be doing that by taking a look at the reasoning behind the court's rulings that the exclusive contract between ADOR and NewJeans is still valid. Now, I am going to refer to this as chapter 1 because, as I said, this story is far from over, but thanks to this ruling, we can finally stop referring to things as speculations and actually start calling them legal facts. But I'm already getting ahead of myself. I always like to preface my videos with a disclaimer, and while I've told you guys many times I am indifferent to Hybe and ADOR, I do want to say that as a long-term K-pop fan and someone who's worked in the industry, I do care about the K-pop industry very deeply. And it's for that reason that I'm very happy with this ruling, because I believe this secures the future of K-pop moving forward. While I am sympathetic to NewJeans, and I acknowledge that a lot of the dumb decisions they've made have been because of poor guidance from their parents and being gaslit and manipulated by Hee-Jin, unfortunately I am also a big believer of taking accountability for one's actions and play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And speaking of the devil herself, Hee-Jin, I think she's an evil bitch and she can kick rocks. With that being said, sources and references are linked down in the description for your viewing and reviewing pleasures. And I always encourage you guys to take everything I say with a grain of salt and a dash of your own critical thinking, mix that together with the facts that you know, and come to your own conclusions. You can also check out all my coverage of ADORgate so far up above in the ADORgate playlist that is also linked at the end of this video. And with that being said, let's get into it. On October 30th, at approximately 10:45 a.m., the Seoul Central District Court's presiding judge, Jung Hye, ruled in favor of ADOR, upholding the validity of the exclusive contract with NewJeans and confirming their obligation to return to the company. Because this is a civil trial, NewJeans were actually not required to attend the ruling and chose not to do so. And to many, this signaled the fact that they knew they would lose, especially after the two failed prior mediation sessions. And while this result seemed inevitable to many, to NewJeans fans, it still apparently came as a shock. But before we get into the reactions of ADOR, NewJeans, and the general public, let's start with actually breaking down the court's reasonings behind their ruling, because child, if I was NewJeans, I wouldn't have gone either, because the judge read their claims to filth. And not only that, a lot of the statements made by the judge set a huge precedent for all of Hee-Jin's ongoing cases as well. And to be honest, let's start with Hee-Jin, because I find it quite interesting that in a trial that did not even involve her, some way, somehow, her name was mentioned a grand total of 104 times in the verdict statement. If she's good at one thing, she's good at keeping herself relevant. Anyway, now, the first statement from the court is one I think you guys have heard ad nauseum at this point. It is hard for ADOR's dismissal of Hee-Jin alone to be seen as a breach of contract. This is a line you would have seen as the title of a number of articles that dropped right after the verdict was announced. But it confirms something we, the audience, have already known for quite a long time. NewJeans' whole argument has always centered on the fact that they believe that Hee-Jin's dismissal was unfair and Hee-Jin was the only one protecting them from the company abusing and mistreating them. But we have been saying that unfortunately for you, Hee-Jin's contract and your contract are two separate issues. Regardless of whether she was unfairly dismissed or not, it's not reason for NewJeans to terminate their contracts. And the judge also said as much in the original first hearing. The judge explained that if Hee-Jin's presence was so integral to them deciding to sign the contracts, there should have been a key man clause requiring her to work with them to some extent or in a specific position, for example CEO, if they knew that that was a condition that was necessary for them to continue to work with ADOR in all cases, which unfortunately they didn't do. And it's interesting they didn't do that considering Hee-Jin herself is the one who wrote their contracts. Not only that, but the court also acknowledged the fact that ADOR did everything within their power to try and keep Hee-Jin. We talked about this in the 1 year recap, which if you haven't watched it, you should check it out. Hee-Jin said in her initial press conference back in April 2024 that she was happy not to be the CEO as long as she could continue to fulfill her creative vision with NewJeans. And ADOR called her bluff. They removed her from the CEO position, but they actually offered her an extension, a 5-year extension, mind you, on her existing producer contract so she could continue as the creative director of NewJeans. And what did she do? she spat in their face and she said no thank you and she left. So ADOR has actually gone above and beyond what they were required to do to keep her, and she is the one who said that she doesn't want to be there. So you cannot now hold ADOR responsible for Min Hee-Jin's choices. But even if we were to humour NewJeans a little bit and say that they could terminate their contract based on Min Hee-Jin's dismissal, the court also said that, well, Hybe had the right to dismiss her. The exact statement was, Hybe's audit of Min Hee-Jin's ADOR was not retaliatory. Min Hee-Jin was the first to start a public opinion war after April 3rd, 2024 and April 11th, 2024. Now, in my opinion, this statement here is quite the bombshell, and if I was Min Hee-Jin, I would be worried, because we have a judge saying on the books now that Hybe's audit was not retaliatory in nature, which is the premise and base of most of Min Hee-Jin's arguments as to why she should get her stocks, why what she said isn't defamation, and so on and so forth. So now that the judge has actually said that Min Hee-Jin herself was the catalyst for the entire media circus, this is going to be a massive blow, particularly to Min Hee-Jin's cases against Belief Lab and Hybe. In the Belief Lab case, they can use this as evidence that she did intentionally say the statement she said with the intention to harm Eyelet, because the court has already acknowledged that she did want to start a public opinion war with her inflammatory comments. And this is a lot more significant to the Belief case than it is to the Source Music case, because Belief's argument centers on the fact that Min Hee-Jin's intention was to cause harm. Not just that the things she said were inflammatory and not true, but that she said them out of malicious intent. In the Hybe case, as we said, Min Hee-Jin's whole argument is based on the fact that the audit against her was retaliatory. But the court has just said, actually, no, it wasn't. Indirectly justifying not only the audit, but the subsequent termination of her CEO position and shareholder agreement, which means she's no longer entitled to her stocks. And that goes hand in hand with the Yongsan Police's statement that the audit was carried out legally and that the Kakao Talk messages were obtained legally, announced back in July 2025. And to make matters even worse for Min Hee-Jin, the courts have given further justification to Hybe's audit and also laid out the groundwork for ADOR's future tampering case against her. The court said, according to the Kakao chat history, former CEO Min prepared a public relations battle, reports to relevant authorities and a lawsuit in advance, but did not step forward herself and instead looked for investors. This is directly acknowledging that not only is there evidence of Min Hee-Jin's scheme, but she'd already started to take action too. And I do find that very interesting because the judge presiding over this case, in my memory, is the same judge from her first injunction. And you might remember that one of the technicalities she won on is that it's not illegal to plan a management takeover. They acknowledged that she had made plans. They acknowledged that those plans would be harmful to Hybe, but they said that they wouldn't be harmful to ADOR based on the evidence we had at that time, and that she had not actually taken action. Another thing I think is important to remember is that at that time, it had only been about 2 or so weeks that Hybe had to go through the evidence when the case started. So they didn't have all the evidence that we have now, and they definitely wouldn't have had enough time to review it all. I do kind of wonder if that same case happened today, would the ruling still be the same? Or with the evidence we have now, would that ruling be overturned? Unfortunately, I don't think that could ever happen because of double jeopardy. She's already won, she's already been tried, so I don't think they could try her again. And honestly, it wouldn't matter at this point because the whole point of that trial was to stop them firing her, and that's already happened. But it would be nice to take that little win away from her, you know what I mean? The other thing that's interesting about this statement is that it kind of calls into question the police's decision not to make Hybe's case against Min Hee-Jin into a criminal case by passing it to the prosecution, because they basically said they found no evidence of her actually taking action. But that is still being appealed, so that could still change now that Hybe can submit this ruling as additional evidence as to why this case should be treated as a criminal case, especially when they combine it with the next statement from the courts. Min Hee-Jin's public opinion campaign was not to protect NewJeans, but to make them independent. Wow. There it is. Signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours. The judge just confirmed that in the eyes of the law, based on the evidence that has been submitted so far, Min Hee-Jin was in fact trying to remove NewJeans from ADOR's jurisdiction and make them independent. Now, again, this is massive fuel for Hybe's case and ADOR's potential future tampering case, because it all contingents on the fact that she had planned, she had taken action, and she was trying to carry out a management takeover. I do also want to just specify again that these are precedent or legal facts based on the evidence that has been presented so far. And while we do know that Hybe and its other labels are majority using a lot of the same evidence plus additional stuff, it is also important to recognize that these things can still change if Min Hee-Jin can provide evidence to the contrary. I mean, I doubt she'll have anything convincing unless she has an alternative explanation for every single word she's ever said. But she is the queen of bullshitting, so I wouldn't put it past her. Now, beyond setting Minhee up for the time of her life in the courts this November, the judge did also, of course, address some of the other claims and complaints that NewJeans had as their justifications to why they had been mistreated or ignored, etc., etc., especially those pertaining to other idols. In relation to the plagiarism allegations against Islet and the idea that Hybe was trying to replace NewJeans with them, the judge said, although some similarities can be confirmed in the planning proposals and photos of NewJeans and Islet, it is difficult to see Islet as having copied NewJeans. The concept of young female idols is not something that can be included in IP rights. There it is. You cannot copyright being a young Korean girl. I'm sorry. This is going to be so vindicating for Islet fans. And again, it's going to be a thorn in the side of Hee-Jin in the B-Lift case. In relation to Ignoregate as well, the judge also confirmed what we've all already known for a while now. Based on the evidence submitted, it is difficult to recognize that Hani heard remarks like, ignore her, from an Islet manager. Even if additional footage were available, CCTV has no audio, so the alleged statements could not be verifiable. In layman's terms, that's the judge saying, Hani's claims are pure hearsay, and it's difficult for us to agree with her that those happened because all the evidence presented so far is to the contrary, and any additional evidence that could have been deleted won't make a difference anyway. I particularly think the wording, it's difficult to recognize Hani heard, that is like such legalese for, bitch, ain't nobody believe what you have to say. And I do also just want to pay lip service to the fact that in this whole saga, Islet and the Seraphim are the real victims of all of this, because these young women did not do anything wrong and they have been dragged through the mud time and time again for absolutely no reason. Speaking of the Seraphim, the judge also pointed out that the throwaway new comment was taken out of context and in reality referred to a promotional strategy regarding the Seraphim. Once again, recognizing the explanation that Hybe gave. The comment was meant to break the association between NewJeans, the Seraphim and aespa as competitors and make a new association between aespa, the Seraphim and IVE, which is why the I was added. They actually do not want their own girl groups to be competitors with each other, which again goes hand in hand with the idea that they do not want Islet to be a competitor with NewJeans either. Finally, the judge added that given that Hybe invested over 21 billion won in the debut of NewJeans and achieved significant success, it's difficult to interpret this as Hybe abandoning NewJeans, as well as that there was insufficient evidence to prove all the claims that NewJeans had made about being neglected, ignored in the elevator by Bang PD, or mistreated by Bang, Hybe, or ADOR. All in all, every claim NewJeans made was directly shot down because they were unable to provide evidence of even one of the things that they claimed. And all the statements in this ruling were basically a more detailed repetition of what had been said by the previous court when NewJeans lost the injunction for the same reasons back in March. In conclusion, the contract signed between ADOR and NewJeans on April 21st, 2022 remained valid. And as a result, not only does NewJeans need to return to ADOR, but they also have to pay for all the litigation costs for ADOR too. Lucky for them, they've got an extra year to pay off all those debts, thanks to the time they wasted. Now that we have the facts, it's time for us to look at the responses from either side and the public. But before that, I think it's time for a kitty intermission. This is your chance to run to the loo or go refill your snacks, and of course to leave a like if you've enjoyed this video so far, and subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on future content so you can become a superstar. And speaking of more content, I've got something new and exciting for you guys. I've been working on a way to connect with you guys in between uploads, and I've decided to launch a new Instagram account. The username is hi guys, Han here, and on this account I'll be showing you more about life off camera here in Korea, reacting to hot K-pop news in real time via my stories, and I'll be able to communicate more with all of you. So if that sounds like something you'd enjoy, link and come say hello. There'll also be plenty of cat pictures. Anyway, it's time to continue, so make sure you're back on your sofa in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're now going to jump into the responses that either side gave and also the reactions from the public. So we're going to start with ADOR's statement, and I'm actually just going to read the whole statement to you guys first so you can get your own feel for it before I give you my reactions. So ADOR said, "Today the court ruled in the lawsuit to confirm the validity of the exclusive contract between our company and our artist NewJeans, that the exclusive contract between our two parties is still valid. The court ruled that the company has not breached its obligations as a management company and that attempts to escape the exclusive contract by creating the appearance of a breakdown of trust should not be permitted. We are deeply grateful for the court's decision. Since the artist's claims for termination of the exclusive contract in November of last year, we have been carefully observing the series of events with a heavy heart, including the main lawsuit to confirm the validity of the exclusive contract, the application for an injunction to prevent confusion until the main decision is made, the court's acceptance decision, the artist's immediate appeal, and the decision to dismiss it. For nearly a year, the courts have repeatedly ruled in various related lawsuits that our company still retains management rights under the exclusive contract, and that the artist must engage in entertainment activities with us. We sincerely hope that today's result, in which many claims and facts have been verified over a long period of time and a judgment has been handed down with the same intent once again, will serve as an opportunity for the artist to calmly reflect on this matter. We will also reaffirm our role and responsibilities as a management agency, as required by the exclusive contract. As we stated during the main trial, we are ready to begin activities, including the release of a full-length album, and are awaiting NewJeans' return. Through discussion with the artists, we will do our best to ensure their return to fans." Now, generally, I do think this is a pretty standard statement on the surface. It's definitely a lot nicer than what I would have written, I tell you. But if you read between the lines, there is a little bit of a petty message in there. Bitch, we told you. ADOR made it a point to point out that the courts have been siding with them over and over again throughout this whole process, and the judgment was made over a long period of reviewing the facts. And personally, I think this is a slight dig at NewJeans' statement after they lost the injunction that they didn't have enough time to prepare all of their evidence, which is a justification their fans repeated over and over again, that, oh, in this case it's longer, we have more time, we're going to bring something more, we're going to finally prove it. They just didn't have enough time last time. So this is specifying that, well, we gave you the time, you had all the time in the world, and look, the result is the same. They also reminded people that NewJeans are not being banned from being idols. They are just being told that they have to do the activities with the company. NewJeans are the only reason they are not active right now. The company is not trying to stunt their careers, and they've even specified we have things ready for them. They essentially start off their whole statement by making their defenses against the criticisms they've received up until now, and they leave it to the end before they actually address NewJeans themselves. But I do think this is smart for two reasons. The first reason is ADOR is saying that it will give time to NewJeans to reflect on everything that's happened, which honestly I think is a good and necessary move. Emotions are still running high, and it would be unrealistic to expect the girls to sit down next week Monday and be ready to talk business. They are going to need some time to get over everything that's happened, although I know they're appealing, we'll get to that. But in an ideal situation, I feel like a lot of companies would try to force them to work as soon as possible, but that would actually just make the company look more heartless and like money driven. Not that companies are people with morals in the first place, but I think a lot of people would actually criticize them more if they tried to do that. And like I said, for NewJeans' emotional state, it is necessary to accept this reality, let it sink in before they're ready to then start moving forward. I do think it's a little bit ironic though, because if they give it a few weeks, it will be almost exactly the 1 year anniversary of when NewJeans walked out in the first place from their little press conference. So timing. But anyway, on a serious note, I do think it's the compassionate choice or the compassionate way to go about things, even if ADOR is well within their right to want NewJeans to come back to work as soon as possible. The other thing I think is smart about how they address NewJeans in the statement is that they've said, oh, we're ready to hit the ground running when you guys come back. But I think that single line also has a number of underlying messages in it. Firstly, to NewJeans, it's reminding them that this is the only way for them to move forward if they want to keep being idols. They're essentially dangling the album in front of them saying, hey, look, you can have this. We're ready for you to have this. And if I remember correctly, I don't think NewJeans ever released a full-length album under Hee-Jin either. So this would be a significant thing for them, and it's also the opportunity for them to be close to their fans again. We do know that they've been doing unofficial things like going to birthday cafes and stuff like that to see their fans, but I can imagine after almost a year of being off stage, if we minus the atrocity that was Complex Con, I would want to see my fans again. So it is a tempting offer. Likewise to the fans, it's given an ultimatum of sorts. We did all the legal stuff you guys wanted, we've given them the opportunity to prove themselves, and they failed. The court has sided with us every time, and look, we are ready to move forward. We are ready to give you guys what you want. You guys want new music from your artists, don't you? Well, this is the only way. There are no more other alternatives. So what are you going to do? Are you going to encourage them to continue down this path of nothingness? Or are you going to encourage them to come back so that we can give you the shiny new full-length album that you've been waiting for? I feel like for a lot of bunnies, they have been really looking forward to this case in particular because they thought this is when NewJeans would finally bring out their secret weapons, their amazing evidence, their groundbreaking, like, I don't know what they were expecting because we knew they didn't have anything from the beginning, but I feel like this was their last hope. And now that that hope is gone, of course, they're still going to wait for the appeal to go through. Until now, we've always seen them say, like, wait for this, or wait for that, or wait for the next thing. And there's just nothing left to wait for. So I feel like even NewJeans fans themselves have lost hope, so to speak. And, well, ADOR has offered them an olive branch, if you will. Take it or leave it. Finally, I think this line signals to investors, which I know is not the climactic ending you were looking for. Sorry guys, I'm just being real. Hype stocks went crazy on the 30th due to a combination of BTS RM's speech at the APEC summit in Gyeongju, which, as an army, I'm very proud of my man. Our president. Anyway, the rumor being leaked about BTS's tour not being 60 shows, but in fact 80 shows. I think one of the biggest K-pop tours, if not the biggest K-pop tour of all time. Please give us residencies. Please, just spend 2 weeks in Seoul. I need to go to a wedding in May. Please, just be here for 2 weeks. Anyway, I digress. And also ADOR's victory, because they've shown that, look, we held onto our valuable IP and we are ready for the next step. So for many spectators, this should be the end of the road. But alas, we all know that things can never be that simple because NewJeans have decided to appeal. As I'm sure none of you will be surprised to know, NewJeans were already ready for their worst case scenario, despite their constant declarations that they would win. And even before the ruling was announced, there was already speculation that they were preparing their post-ruling strategy because the Sejong lawyers actually submitted additional arguments the day before the ruling. Mind you, we've had 2 months of mediation sessions that they could have been submitting things. They waited till the day before. Basically, as far as I'm concerned, they're setting up to say that, look, the court did not review all the evidence that we submitted, therefore this ruling was unfair, it's unjust, like legal sob story. Anyway, here's what the Sejong lawyers had to say on behalf of NewJeans, and it's a very short statement. Hello, this is the law firm Sejong, the legal representative of Minji, Hani, Danielle, Hee-Jin, and Hee-Jin, hereinafter referred to as the members. Today, the Seoul Central District Court delivered its first instance ruling regarding the lawsuit filed by ADOR Co. Ltd, hereinafter ADOR, seeking confirmation of the validity of the exclusive contracts with the members, determining that the exclusive contracts are valid. While the members respect the court's decision, they maintain that it is impossible to return to ADOR and continue normal entertainment activities, as the relationship of trust with ADOR has been completely broken. Accordingly, the members plan to immediately appeal the first instant verdict and hope that the appellant court will thoroughly review the facts of the case and the legal principles concerning the termination of the exclusive contracts to render a fair and wise judgment. Lastly, the members sincerely thank all the fans who have waited patiently and continue to support them for a long time. Thank you. Basically a whole nothing burger as far as I'm concerned. It's basically almost the exact same thing they said last time, and I love the paradoxical line of, while the members respect the court's decisions, we've elected to ignore it by filing an appeal. They're also implying that the previous court's decision was not a fair and wise judgment, which I think is also very rude, but that's neither here nor there. The appeal was something that we saw coming a mile away, and for those keeping count, I am currently 4 for 4 with my predictions, just by the way. And at this point, they are also just racking up bills, because once again, NewJeans are gonna have to pay for all of ADOR's legal costs when they eventually lose again. Speaking of which, a lot of people did have questions about why NewJeans was paying ADOR's legal fees, and I will say that this is common practice in Korea to stop litigious lawsuits, but in some cases they do also put a cap on what the loser will have to pay so that they're not being financially abused by the person who wins, basically. But from what I've seen, there doesn't seem to be a cap on this particular case. Also, I do think that it could be that part of the reason NewJeans is appealing is to defer when they will have to pay ADOR, because I'm not sure if this is how it works, this is just pure speculation, but I imagine ADOR would be able to take money from their royalties or stop paying NewJeans their royalties as a way to recoup the funds that NewJeans now owes them. So if they were to do that, that means that as soon as this ruling is solidified, NewJeans have no income. Bear in mind, right now, they would still be receiving their royalties even though they're not working. If this ruling is solidified, there's no more appeals, the case is done. From that point, if what I think is correct, from that point, ADOR would be able to collect all their money, which means that their well would have dried up. The taps are turned off. The water's been cut off. You gotta pay your bills. So yeah, I could see that being another reason why they would go after this appeal. Not because they think they can win, but because they need to buy time. I do think that would be a very short-sighted strategy, but who am I to watch someone else's purse? Now, more so than ADOR and NewJeans reactions, the responses I personally found the most interesting were those from the public. All of our timelines are different and not all of us are chronically online, so I'm sure there was a variety of reactions. From the GP, of course, a lot of people were actually surprised by this verdict because they haven't been keeping up with the case since Hee-Jin's press conference. No surprises there. And it goes to show just how important first impressions can be. For the K-pop community at large, however, a lot of people were quite happy with the verdict. Because of course, while there are still pockets of people who hate HYBE, hate Bangkok, hate BTS, and don't want to see a company win on principle alone, for those who have been paying attention to this case or understand what this case means for the wider K-pop community, they are quite happy that NewJeans hasn't been able to win on the basis of nothing, basically. As for NewJeans fans themselves, as we said, a lot of buddies were surprised and disappointed in the results. But from what I've seen and heard, they haven't really been as vocal about what NewJeans should do next as they usually are. As I said, usually we're looking forward to wait until the next trial or wait until the next proof or whatever the case may be, but they've run out of things to wait for. I have also seen an uptick in negative comments across my channels as well. And if you don't know about my second channel, go and check it out, Beyond the Haniverse. But all of them center around, how could you root for this evil corporation against the rights of these young women who are victims of abuse and bullying, you evil HYBE company stan? And don't follow any form of logic, so it doesn't really bother me. On Korean communities, a lot of K-pop fans have actually been congratulating and celebrating Isla and Seraphim, again, the true victims of this case, which to me is quite funny because I feel like through all of this, Hee-Jin's actually done the opposite of what she wanted and actually made them more popular, because I feel like all of us are rooting for them even if we're not actively stans of those groups. And of course, netizens have also been mocking NewJeans. And there is one picture which, while morbidly hilarious to me, is also a painfully accurate depiction of NewJeans' grim reality. On the left is a rabbit representing NewJeans, desperately asking, CEO, what should we do next? To which Hee-Jin coldly and curtly replies, "Oui? I didn't know you spoke French." I did make a brief little reaction to the news on my second channel, but I'm sure all of you know by now that Hee-Jin announced her new entertainment company just last week. And in the 24 hours since the court's rulings, there have already been rumours surrounding Hee-Jin possibly having a new girl group, NewJeans being possibly locked in 2 different contracts, or NewJeans being a key component of Hee-Jin's contract with her secret investor, swirling around the internet. We will eventually talk about this when we have a bit more information and I finish catching up with all the Hee-Jin side of things. But I've said this since the beginning and I will say it again. I wholeheartedly believe that Hee-Jin has no intention of saving NewJeans. She did not launch her new company before the ruling to boost morale because she thought NewJeans could win. She did it because she had to do it at that time for good optics, to make it look like she was preparing something for them. If she waited until after the ruling to announce her new company, it would look like she was abandoning them and moving on, which would change sentiments towards her, because remember, a lot of the GP still think she's the good guy. Also, she is not encouraging NewJeans to continue fighting ADOR because she thinks they can win, but because she needs their case to last longer than hers, so that the legal precedents that we discussed today are not solidified and cannot be used against her in her own cases. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked out, but that's what she's pushing for. And in terms of the money, this is all my own speculation. I don't have any proof for this, but we do know that Hee-Jin and NewJeans are using the same lawyers and that Hee-Jin was associated with them first. I wholeheartedly believe that while Hee-Jin's name is on the contracts, NewJeans' bank accounts are on the bills. And I believe these lawyers are working for Hee-Jin's best interests, because if we see the way they argue in her legal cases versus NewJeans, it is night and day. And at the end of this, that means that NewJeans are going to be the one left holding the bag. And even if they are able to reach an agreement and have a termination with ADOR, there will be a fee, and guess who's going to be liable for that too? NewJeans, not Hee-Jin. At the end of all of this, the only one left with any financial impact is going to be NewJeans. And Hee-Jin will be able to sell their story on the promise that they'll get a cut that they will never see. And all she's doing now is making sure that if she cannot have NewJeans, no one can. At least not in their prime. So, What's next? As I said, this case sets a lot of precedents for a lot of future rulings, but these are based only on the evidence submitted by ADOR and NewJeans. Hee-Jin and the HYBE labels are still submitting their own evidence and making new arguments, so things can change in future cases. But for now, if we discuss on the premise that everything decided now will be upheld through Hee-Jin's cases, Hee-Jin is royally fucked. While she is an S-tier bullshitter, unless she can disprove all of her own words, explain away every letter she's ever typed and every action she's ever took, and provide alternative explanations, the writing is pretty much on the wall, and man does she have her work cut out for her. October 31st, which is yesterday at the time of recording, was her 4th hearing with BLIF Labs. November 7th will be her 4th hearing with Source Music, and this is the point where they will be able to present their argument with all the Kakao Talk messages. And then November 27th is the next hearing for the HYBE case, where Hee-Jin will have to testify on the stand. And then the final arguments for the HYBE case will take place on December 18th. So unless she continues to use her usual stall tactics by delaying hearings, it is very likely we are going to get the results for all of these cases in and around January 2026. And I can definitely see her trying to drag it out to overlap with BTS's March comeback. But I think that might backfire considering how well HYBE stocks are doing right now. An announcement that she lost the case would only boost the stocks even more. But for that, we'll have to wait and see. As for NewJeans, considering they don't have anything new to present, depending on the court schedules, I could see this case wrapping up in around 4 to 6 months. I think you can appeal twice, I'm not sure. But I imagine those will be very short hearings regardless, and end in pretty much the same way. From there, we'll have to see if Hee-Jin's secret backer decides to pay the termination fee, or if they decide to go into litigation again to try and reduce the fee they have to pay. But what I will say is that for ADOR side, once they are done dealing with NewJeans, I cannot wait for them to hit Hee-Jin with the mother of all tampering cases. And you can bet I'll be here to cover it. So I'll see you guys in the 2-year recap next spring too. Anyway, this has been Han from the Haniverse. Thanks for stopping by.